following is a message from Christ Central Manchester, a church that meets in the heart of Manchester in the UK. To find out more about us, please visit www.christcentral.org.uk.
We're in the Gospel of Luke this morning. We've just finished a series in the book of Galatians. I don't know about you, but I loved just grappling with that book and the themes of grace and the themes of fighting and nailing legalism. Here we are this morning, starting a mini-series that we're going to be looking at over the summer. I'm kicking it off today, but a few other guys are going to be looking at different parables of Jesus. I think there's 5 parables that we're going to look at over the next 5 Sundays, including today. And they're not the parables that you'd normally expect to be spoken about. So we deliberately kind of going a little bit for the kind of the ones that get less airtime. And this morning we're going to be in Luke chapter 12 and verse 13, looking at the rich fool. The rich fool. I don't know if you remember Mr. T, but I don't know if you remember the A-Team, but it just came to mind then. So there you go. Let's read from Luke chapter 12 and verse 13. We're talking about the rich fool. Someone in the crowd, that's my best impression. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." The words should be on the screen for you if you haven't got a Bible with you. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich towards God." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." I heard a sermon on this passage, and just after the pastor read out that passage, in that denomination it's traditional to say, "This is the word of the Lord." And so he finished that passage and said, "This is the word of the Lord." And then he said, "Unfortunately." And didn't try and qualify it. Just left it. Isn't this unfortunate that this is in the Bible? He was totally joking, and everyone hopefully understood that he was joking. But this is one of those passages. And before I get going, this is not one of those give us all your money, fundraiser, Blue Peter appeal kind of sermons. That isn't why we're talking about this parable. I'm not asking you this morning for your money for the church coffers because we need it. But you cannot do a series on any of the teachings of Jesus, including his parables, and avoid the topic of money. It is virtually impossible because Jesus talked about money more than he talked about anything else. He just did. Whether we like it, whether it's unfortunate or not, it is true. This might be why this guy in the crowd felt he could ask Jesus to sort his brother out, because he'd heard Jesus talking about money before. He'd heard Jesus talk about money a lot. And he just thought, do you know what, I'll ask him. Actually, my brother's here. You know, it's one of those kind of moments where you're in a sermon and you think, I wish they were here to hear this. It was kind of one of those moments for him. And maybe his brother is here on this occasion and he's thinking, right, last time he wasn't here. And he missed the one about money. And my mum and dad have died and given him all the money. And he's not giving me any. And so there's a kind of issue of Old Testament inheritance law being thrown at Jesus. And this guy's taking the opportunity, maybe his brother is there on this occasion, he's saying, Jesus, sort my brother out. He's the oldest, but he's been a right stingy type, what's it? Can you sort him out? Because he's not giving any of the money that is mine. And Jesus, as I said already, did talk about money a lot. And unashamedly, I go here this morning, and if you are a guest here today, I want you to know we're not after your money. This isn't why we're talking about this, but we do want you to see how Jesus views money and how he thinks his followers should view money, and the powerful effect that if those followers of Jesus take seriously what he says about money, the powerful effect that can have on an otherwise pretty greedy world around us. You understand what I'm saying? This is not me trying to fundraise. This is me saying, if the church really did look like this, wow, the impact would be incredible. If I looked like this, if my heart looked like this, if I was like this, wow, the impact would be huge. And so there's 2 points this morning we're going to look at. Number 1 is money and eternity. And number 2, money and your heart. Money and my heart. First of all, money and eternity. Immediately, going back to this guy asking Jesus to sort his situation out, immediately Jesus rebukes him for bringing his own agenda to Jesus. It's like this guy said, I want you, Jesus, but I want, first of all, can you sort this out? Jesus says, you can't do that with me. You don't get to negotiate with me some kind of prenuptial contract before you get me. We don't become Christians. The idea is that we don't become Christians. We don't become followers of Jesus just so that he can sort our brother out who should share some money with us. We don't become Christians just so that he can make me rich, so that he can look after me financially, or so that he'll provide me with a spouse, or provide me with a job, or provide me with a promotion. We get Jesus full stop. That's it. We don't go after Jesus for some little add-on that he might provide. I'll become a Christian if you can find me a wife. So Jesus says, no, you're not going to get me to be your arbiter in this. It's a funny one because in some ways it could look contradictory, because at other times Jesus is happy to be called a judge. And he will one day judge every man and woman. That isn't contradicting this. This is saying, look, I'm not here to judge your petty disagreements. So he's saying, I'm not here to judge, but on another occasion I am here to judge. There's 2 different judges being talked about, 2 different judgments being called upon. And he's saying, I'm not here to sort out your petty little nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense, but I'm not here to sort out that kind of petty issue. And then Jesus moves on and uses this opportunity to again talk about money. And this time he moves on to talk about a lottery winner. So Jesus uses the opportunity to really talk about a lottery winner. In our day and age, let's bring it into our context. The lottery ties in so well with what we're looking at here. And he warns them against greed, which really means the desire to have more than we need, more than enough, more than the basic needs. So he's not saying don't worry, he says don't worry about your basic needs later on, but this is greed that goes beyond what you really need. And there's a double warning in verse 15, which means really, really, really look out. Watch out and be on your guard in verse 15. But it's the lottery. This guy's won the lottery effectively, hasn't he? He's got all this grain already. He's doing all right. He says he's a rich man who acquires more than he needs. So he's already, paying by cash, thank you very much, in any restaurant. But he's also got an abundant crop one particular year. He's hit the jackpot. And his current barns aren't big enough. It's like a lottery winner. This is the big dream. Verse 19. We want to say this to ourselves, don't we? We want to be able to say, a lot of our society, and you and me come into it, I'm sure. We want to be able to say, like this guy did, we're sorted financially. Now we can sit back, go on an all-inclusive holiday, have an all-inclusive life, if you like. And you hear stories, don't you? You've only got to Google lottery winner, and you'll hear the stories of winners who don't let it change them. They're the unusual ones. Because many of them say it won't change me. And then you get those who do let it change them, are unashamedly letting it change them, and blow the lot. I read about one guy who had won 9 million on the lottery, and then was charged a couple of years later for handling stolen goods. How awesome's that? Wow. Or Emma Wildin, aged 30 at the time of winning the lottery, she won $1 million. She's a stay-at-home mum. I think she had 2 children. And she was very sensible with her $1 million. I think she blew 100,000. They bought cars and gifts for people. And then they invested the rest, 900,000 they invested in property. And she says they still budget when she goes to do the food shop, but they have less financial worries. I doubt they have no financial worries, because I think even with money comes financial burden and pressure. But I'm sure life's easier for them than it was. I think we can be real about that. And verse 19 describes the dream that people have. To have no financial worries is the dream. I think it's an unreal dream, but it's the dream. It sounds like a harmless dream, but Jesus warns in this passage. He says, look, if you have that dream, or if you even see that dream come true, and it's devoid of God, or devoid of thoughts about God, or devoid of thoughts about putting Him first, the dream, this wonderful dream of winning the lottery, the dream will one day become a nightmare. It will no longer be a dream, it will be a horrendous nightmare. So I want to ask you this morning, before we go any further, what do you dream about? What do you want to see? I think that comes at the heart of what's going on in this passage. What do we daydream about? What do we think about when we're just, when there's nothing else to do, when there's nothing else to think about? What is it you and I daydream about? I might think about a lovely all-inclusive holiday to Spain or some Caribbean island. That would be something I would enjoy and dream about, maybe. Or would you think about seeing thousands of people in Manchester and Salford saved, come to know Jesus as their Lord? Or would you dream about people that you know at work or in your friends and family who don't know the Lord yet, coming to know Him? Or would you dream about your job or your workplace coming alive with kingdom values? A school, an office, a ward where people are smiling, patients feel cared for, children feel like they're being taught, and underneath all of it is this desire to please Jesus. You would dream about a transformed workplace that you currently work in. Maybe you would dream about that. Is God and His eternity on your mind more than the latest, shiniest gadget or possession? Is God and eternity and the things of His kingdom more on your mind than making it to financial security, whatever that is? I don't even know what that is. Not having a mortgage? I don't know. Having a mortgage? I don't know. People say, I would love to just get the mortgage paid off, get some financial security. We have friends who kind of made that their life goal. Well, not even a life goal, like a short term, go mad at the mortgage, get the mortgage done, because then they can really sit back and relax and eat, drink, and be merry. There's kind of that, it's out there. That kind of thinking is out there. And Jesus says there's no such thing as financial security. There's no such thing as that. In this life, there is no such thing. And it really, what he's saying is it blinds us. This kind of thinking that I can acquire, I can get, I can receive, I can gain, I can work and work and work and work and work and get it and get to this place. He says that is blinding you to something more important. It's blinding you to another reality. He says this fool, this rich fool, was rich, got more riches, and foolishly let himself be blinded by money. Money blinded him to some important realities. And first of all, it blinded him to the principle, it blinded him to the existence of eternity and to the principle of eternity. Two things. There was no thought in him. Did you notice this? There was no thought in this rich fool to do anything else with the extra grain that he got. There was no thought. There was just no way. I don't need it, but I'm not going to give it away. Why would I do that? He was blinded to the reality of the eternal and the principles of the eternal kingdom. Tim Keller puts it like this: money blinds us to the existence of the eternal spiritual world and the principles behind the eternal spiritual world. He talks about a letter by a guy called Diognetes, written in the first few hundred years of the early church, and talks of Christians who would share their table. I think this was a guy commentating on Christianity, commenting on the church. I don't know if he was necessarily a Christian, this Diognetes, but he was talking about Christians and saying they seem to share their table with anyone. They eat with anyone, and they share their bed with no one or one person. They share their table with anyone, but not their bed. And therefore, they make many rich. Wow. The Greek culture of the day that guy was writing into, and when you focus on our world today even, and all that there is in our current culture and all that there was in that Greek culture, then sex is easily given away and it's no big deal. And money is held on to and is a big deal in our culture. I want money for this world. Don't you go telling me to give it away. Don't you tell me what to do with my money. There's a blinding light that blinds us to the existence of the long game, of eternity. It's all about the here and now. I can give sex to anyone because it's only about the here and now. And money to no one because I need to look after me in the here and now. Jesus says, give sex to one or none, and money to anyone who asks. It's very countercultural, isn't it? To the Greeks of that day and to our day as well. Invest in what lasts, Jesus says. And people, it would seem, according to the Bible, last for a long time. People last for eternity. So invest in people. Bank accounts don't last, as we know. People last for eternity. So invest in people is where Jesus is going with this. So that's kind of blinding us to the existence of eternity, but also then the principle, which I've almost alluded to already. The world says, build up your savings account. The spiritual or the kingdom or the eternal principle says, empty your bank account. Don't build up your barns to the point that you don't need them. Who's going to benefit from that? You might die tonight, Jesus is saying. Friends, this is huge. And I'm not an expert. I'm just teaching you what the Bible says. And on some occasions, many occasions, when you think, okay, this is what it says, and I'm with you. Let's just look at this, be challenged, and go for it. But I'm not saying I'm ahead of you. Some of you are ahead of me in this. Some of you are behind me, probably, in a room like this. Some of you are ahead of me. There is generosity in this room that would bring tears to your eyes if you knew about it. If you knew the story. There's going to be stories in heaven. There will be stories in heaven from in this room. I know some of them. I don't know all of them. God knows all of them. And I'm not, again, talking about fundraising for the church. It's bigger than that. Some of you give money to organisations and people overseas and people in this country that are doing things for God, and you support them. And you say, oh, do you know what? I'd rather my account wasn't as big because I'd rather put the money there. You get it. Some of you get this. And the rest of us are, I'm saying, let's look at getting this. Let's look at taking this on. This is huge. And Jesus knew it was huge, which is why he talked about it so much, money. He knew it was huge. He knew that money was in many ways the be-all and end-all for us. It could come into any context, money, and call us out, reveal our cards, if you know what I mean. It would reveal our heart, money, in many situations. It's the great divider. Do you see eternity or the pound sign? Do you see a people-populated heaven or a cash-filled bank account? Which one do you see? Jesus is saying, don't let money blind you for what is real and what is lasting. And again, Tim Keller is so helpful here. He says, giving is not a duty. It is at the heart of everything you and I are and do. There is no reality to your life in God. This is stark. There is no reality to your life in God unless you treat money differently to how everybody else does. Wow. In many ways, Tim Keller says, money is the bottom line for Jesus. Wow. You think, it's got to be about love and it's got to be about peace. In many ways, money is the bottom line for Jesus. Wow. Really? Are you a kind of prosperity gospel type church? No, we're not. No, we're not. God isn't my cash machine. There are poor people who are better Christians than some rich people, and that doesn't undo how great the gospel is. There is no reality to your life in God unless you treat money differently to how everybody else around you does. What it's saying is, what Tim Keller's saying is, are you just like the people at your office? All your security is thrown into the here and now? Or is there something different about you that would actually invite ridicule from them if they really knew? If they knew how much you blew it. You're blowing hundreds of pounds. You're blowing thousands of pounds a year on that gospel thing, on that church thing, on that mission thing. What's wrong with you? You could have spent that on a really nice car rather than that thing you drive. It would invite ridicule if they knew. And that's what we're looking for. That's what Jesus is looking for. If they knew, you'd get such a load of stick. Bring it on. Bring it on. That's what Jesus is looking for. And we could assume Jesus is warning against long-term planning. You could think in this that Jesus is thinking a bit short-term. And maybe he could because he knew he wasn't going to be around for very long. Maybe Jesus is just warning against some, he's trying to warn against long-term planning, and that can be unhelpful because, we've got to be thinking about our pensions and all that. Actually, do you know what he's warning against? Do you know what he's warning against? He is warning against short-termism. He's warning against short-term thinking. He's saying, don't just plan for the next 75 years. Plan for the next 75,000 years and beyond. His thinking is very long-term. Being rich towards God, as this passage says in verse 21, Jesus says, there was no thought of being rich towards God. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself but is not rich towards God. Being rich towards God means thinking ahead to eternity and not just storing up for this bit of 50, whatever you think you've got left, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, some of you. It reminds me of the story of an old missionary couple who were returning home. I've told it before. They were returning home after decades overseas serving God. And they happened to be on the same boat as a president at the time who was also returning home from a hunting trip. And as they all got off the boat, this big ship, the president received a fanfare. You know, huge turnout, crowds, the president's back, whee! And they just toddled off this boat. No one was there for them, no crowd, no big warm welcome, no well done, you've done so well for decades serving, but all this fanfare for the president having shot a few lions or whatever. And as they settled into their lodgings, because I think they had nowhere permanent yet to stay, as they settled into their lodgings, the wife wisely told her grumbling husband, who'd been struggling with the fact that they'd had no welcome. He just was moaning about it. She wisely says to him, you go into the bedroom and you pray and you talk to God about it. He was annoyed. He went into the bedroom and returned sometime later with his face and his mood completely changed. And the wife asked him what had happened in the room. He said that he'd complained to the Lord that no one had been there to greet them on their return home after serving for decades overseas. And the double annoyance of the president being given such a fanfare. I complained to God about all of this, and he said to his wife, do you know what I heard? I heard God say, but you aren't home yet. It's a similar vein. Friends, we can think that just getting to some sort of financial security in this life would be home. Oh, that would be great. Jesus is saying, there is another home. There is a longer game. There is a longer term perspective that I want you to have. Which brings us on to the second point. From eternity to heart. Money and your heart. Money and my heart. And these things obviously overlap. In verse 34, Jesus wraps it up. That last verse we read. Your heart will be with an eternal treasure, or your heart will be left with your bank account or your barn. It's either or. Your heart will follow what you prize most. I think it was interesting that way around. It's not that your heart is in heaven and eventually your treasure will catch up. No, it's way more challenging than that. Jesus says your money either gets invested here or there, and your heart will follow where your wallet goes. Your heart will follow where your purse goes. You understand that? It's way more challenging. You think, my heart's in heaven, and my money will catch up. Jesus says, no. Either your money's in heaven and your heart will catch it up, or your money's here and your heart will stay here. Wow. It's not very nice. It's not put your money where your mouth is. Your mouth will be where your money went already. Gee, I don't like this passage. Keith, this sounds a bit like legalistic. Sounds like a gospel of works and effort. Well, no, it isn't. Jesus is asking us, who is more important? What will you do with your wealth? What will you do with your money? That's all he's asking. He's saying you can't trick God. You can't have Jesus on your terms. Either he has your heart, and before that your wallet, almost, or he doesn't. If he does, then you will walk a walk that will be countercultural. Remember, Jesus was countercultural. Remember how Jesus was countercultural? Do you remember how countercultural Jesus was? Do you remember? Do you see it? Did you see it? Have you ever seen it? How countercultural was our Saviour? 1 Corinthians 1 verse 18 says, the cross looked like foolishness, and it still does to many people. Jesus was weak, defeated, dying, no bank balance, no mansion, no organisation, no CEO, no assistants. Even his disciples had shot off and ran away from him. Now, he's the most influential person in history with the most powerful movement in history, arguably. How did it start? Counterculturally. You better believe it. He was ridiculed on a cross, hanging naked from a tree. He looked like anything but a victorious king. Anything but. He was a loser. And he was ridiculed and he was spat upon. And now he's the most famous person who we know is God in history. And he had a culture, didn't he? Of giving it away, of turning the other cheek, of serving, of humbling yourselves, of putting others first. I read recently a brilliant phrase that humility is not about degrading yourself. Humility, and that wasn't Jesus' way either. Humility is not degrading yourself because that's just more about you. Humility is just about putting other people first, not about putting yourself down. And Jesus did that. Jesus came and served in that way. Everybody else was more important than Jesus, ultimately on the cross. He was countercultural. And he's saying, be like that. Be like me. Don't be consumed with your pension plans. Don't be consumed with the here and now, which is what a pension plan is. It's the here and now. It's the next 50 years. That's the here and now, Jesus is saying. Be consumed with what's beyond that. Get your heart on his page, is what Jesus is saying. He says we aren't to worry, little flock, verse 32. He's given his little flock, that just happens to be quite big now around the world, he's given us his kingdom. So he says, give to the poor who will last forever. Invest in people who will last forever. Invest in that future market of people who will last forever. Now, friends, I know that this is that this left raw like this is like a giant pill to swallow. I understand that, and it is for me as well. But I would be doing you an injustice if I tried to dress it up. If I tried to say, but actually, there's a little sub-clause. You know, this kind of pension. Or, I'm not saying pensions are wrong, because I have one. I'm not saying it's wrong to store. I don't think the point was it was wrong to have barns in the first place. It's just when all of that comes first and last. It's just when there's no thought of God in the mix. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself or herself, but is not rich towards God. The heart is being rich towards God first. You understand where I'm going, and I think where Jesus is going. And in closing, being rich towards God, if greed is like a poison, which it is, the antidote is verse 21, be rich towards God. And antidotes to the poison of greed would include, when you get a pay rise, plan how you will give some of it away or even all of it away first. I heard about somebody, I don't know who it was, certainly wouldn't say who it was, but I was just trying to remember who it was, who talked about the fact that when they got a pay rise, their first month of experiencing that pay rise, they would just give the whole pay rise bit to God as well as their normal giving, because they never used to have that money anyway. And, is what I thought, you have got it now. But they just love to do that first month. I mean, from then on, they would kind of include it in their thinking about giving to God. But that first month's pay rise would just, that bit would all go. It will be those kind of radical thoughts. I've got a pay rise coming, and what am I going to do with it? God, what do you want me to do with it? That's the antidote to greed. You've been given a gift. Maybe you've been given some inheritance. Is this for us or for us to pass on? When there's opportunities to give, either in church or outside of church, do you plan? Do you pray? Do you ask God, God, what do you want me to do about this? Ask God about big financial decisions. These are all antidotes, I would say, to greed. Asking God about big financial decisions. Asking Him if it's what He wants you to do before you go and make a big purchase of something. Does all of this mean that we can still store and save and be wise and even own things? Well, yeah, of course. I don't think the Bible ever says that we aren't to own anything. Jesus benefited from people that were well off. They stayed well off and kept benefiting Him. They didn't empty their bank accounts so they were suddenly poor and unable to support him. So Jesus would have been contradictory if he'd said there must be no well-off people in his church. But it's not enough to just say it's about your heart. You hear what I'm saying? Oh, as long as your heart's in the right place, if your wallet's down the road, forget it. That's what Jesus is saying. If your heart's in the right place, it means your wallet was already there first. I love that. It's a real challenge. Unfortunate passage. Your heart will be and your heart will go where your money went. Ask God, bring him into these things. This is a radical approach to life, like I've said already, that will bring you ridicule if people only knew. This is a radical heart, and this radical heart will follow a radical funneling of funds. Some of you will funnel thousands into God's kingdom and God's works around the world, and you'll do it with a skip in your step. And I'll be right there with you, trying to copy you. It'll be questions like this. There's an overseas mission over there, or there's a wedding fund for our newborn baby. It will be those decisions. I promise you it will be for some of you. We've got a newborn baby and we need to start saving for, or we've got a toddler, or we've got a 10-year-old and they're going to go to university maybe in 8 years' time. Is it overseas mission, or the university fund, or the wedding fund? Some of you are going, yeah. Investment in property and a pension, or thousands poured into a local social action project. It will be that kind of decision. And do you know what? There was one time, seriously, I'm such a wuss. There was one time I remember in our house in Macclesfield where we used to live, and I don't know why we were feeling the pinch. I couldn't even tell you the details now, but I remember walking down the stairs and we've been talking about money and needing to look at. And do you know, it says in the Bible that to give joyfully. You don't always have to feel joyful. Right? I walked down the stairs and I knew we should do what we were going to do, and I don't even remember what it was. But I just started crying. God, I can't do this. Money's nice, and I need it, and we need it, and the kids need it, and it would be so much easier if we just kept that bit. Sometimes it's going to be tears of mixture of joy and pain. Like gritted joy and tears and pain and all thrown in. But it's this radical approach that I believe is potentially world-changing. When God's people get this, when money's going out from the church, to bless the society around us. I think it's something of what society sees in the church with food banks. I think there's a glimpse there of what I'm talking about. When society and the government says, actually, do you know what? The church is seeming to answer a question that we're struggling to answer at the moment ourselves. We don't need to go, hey, look at us. But we're getting that kind of attention. Because there's people in this room that are pouring their finances and pouring their time into our food bank. And we're blessing many people all the time. And some of you are going to be making radical decisions. Some of you will make radical, painful, joy-filled, tear-filled decisions. But the warning in closing again is for all of us. Don't be blinded to eternity. Don't let your heart drift towards anything other than the richness towards God that he has shown to us already. Paul elsewhere talks unashamedly about what God's already given us. So let's just give. Financially, he's talking about that God's given us so much in Jesus. This is a challenge for all of us. And don't let me be mistaken at all. This is a challenge for me. It's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for you. As I've said already, this will be joyful, painful, radical. It will blow people away. It will invite ridicule. It is the Jesus way. 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 It is his way. Jesus personified this in more than just money terms. And it is ultimately glorious, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. So if the band would like to come up, we're going to finish with a short time of worship. And as we do, as we worship, we're going to take, we're not after your money, especially if you're a guest. We are going to take the offering. We love to worship God with our money. Many of us do it each month from our bank accounts, like direct debits. Some of you I know like to do that on a Sunday morning. That's why we have the offering. But if you are a guest with us, then we're not after your money. But we do love to worship God in many different ways, and this is one of them. But also there'll be an opportunity as the buckets go around for you to put in your Connect card, which is just an opportunity for you to let us know who you are so that we can let you know what's going on and happening in the church. It might be also that you want to just let us know what you've thought about this morning, things that have maybe you've enjoyed, things that you maybe haven't enjoyed. We welcome feedback of any sort. We want to hear your thoughts and how you found being with us this morning. But as we worship, and as these buckets go around, as we worship, ask God to help you. I'm going to be doing the same. I'm going to be asking God, God, help me to put you first. To the point where it affects decisions about money more than it ever has done. And we've given, unashamedly, we have given thousands to God's work over the years. And most of you have done the same. When you add it up, you've given away thousands. And if people knew that, they'd laugh at you. I don't care. And I don't think you do either. Help me, though, Lord, to keep living this out, to keep putting you first. Remove any blindness to eternity that there might be in my eyes, spiritually speaking. Remove any blindness that money has brought about. God, forgive me for greed and for trusting my bank balance before trusting you. As we worship, God, would you just help me, please, in this whole area? I don't want this to be an area that I'm constantly battling. And in a way, we do need to battle it. You know, I remember PJ Smythe, one of our friends in South Africa, he said that when he gives, it's like he's putting a nail in his wallet. You don't want your wallet in your pocket when you're doing that, but you're just nailing greed whenever you give. And so it will be a battle. But I don't want this to be the one area that I don't trust you in, God. You know what I'm saying? I want to trust you in every area. So I'd love it if we would stand together. And before the band plays, let's just pray. I feel like we really, if this was so important for Jesus that he talked about it, I think more than anything else, certainly top 2 or 3 topics that he talked about. I think up there with hell and who he was, probably. We want to get this right. We don't want to get this right just so that the church finances look good. That is not my heart at all. Lord Jesus, we want to get this right. We thank you, you got it right. You got it perfectly right. Lord, we want to not just follow in your footsteps. We want to know, Lord, we thank you, you've done it all for us. You've died in our place. It's all of grace. We're sons and daughters of the King. Through this undeserved favour, we're yours now. And out of this place of wonder, Lord, we don't want to let money be an area that we keep hidden from you. We want it to be all out in the open and say, Lord, take my money, take my resources, take my time. It's all for you. And Lord, let me include you in most decisions about money. Lord, we pray in Jesus. What I mean is, I don't mean, should I buy this chocolate bar or that one? I think he lets us get on with that. But Lord, we want to be letting you in on every medium to major money decision. In Jesus' name. We want to trust you with our money the same way we trust you with our eternity. In your name we pray. And forgive us, Lord, when we've been greedy. Forgive me, Lord God, for being greedy. Forgive me for wanting the shiniest and the newest. And go before us, Lord, please, and help us. Amen. Let's worship together. Let's trust him. Let's look to him. Let's go for it.